The island of Newfoundland, in the far east of Canada. An isolated bay situated along its western coast has been home to a small Conne River community of indigenous Mi'kmaq people for generations. The bay was officially designated as an Indian reserve in 1987. With the help of federal funding, it's changed from being poor and isolated into a strong rural community with full employment and has attracted people into the area. There's also been a reawakening of the community's First Nation identity and their traditional animistic culture. John Jeddor Sr. was born in 1922 to an English mother and Mi'kmaq father. He spent the first 17 years of his life living off hunting and trapping.
We lived by the seasons. Wintertime we lived on eels, trout and whatever, rabbits and stuff, caribou. Not too much caribou in the summer because they're not so good in the summer. And as the fall come around in September, it would be back to the hunting and trapping then. And this is where we used to gather the caribou meat and dry it in for the winter or whatever, you know, and trap for furs, whatever we could barter for flour. That was scarce. We get a bit of tea or sugar or something, but we lived in wigwams then. We had to come home to sell our fur to you know, if we had to get a bit of food for home when I would come back again. We never had any money. There's no such thing as money. And that's how we lived in from year to year.
Chief Meisel Joe is the spiritual and political leader of the 700-strong Conne River community. He and others secured protected status for the area 25 years ago, when it became a reserve.
My first trip on the land with my grandfather, I still remember very clearly the things he did and the walk to get to where we needed to go. And I was only 5 or 6 years old. Still remember that. And the medicines that we would see along the way, he would talk about the medicines and sometimes use the medicines. So I remember that.
What's your story on the jingle dress?
In Whitefish Bay, there was a woman, and she was sick one time, really sick, and she wouldn't get any better. And her grandmother had a vision that she had to make this dress, the jingle dress. You know, she prayed, and her family prayed, and you pray and you dance and you pray, and then she got better.
John Jeddor Sr.'s grandson, John Jeddor Jr., works part-time in the community's new local museum, built with federal funding to celebrate Mi'kmaq culture.
I go to Memorial University in St. John's, Newfoundland, Labrador. I just finished a degree in biochemistry, and I'm hoping to attend medical school. My grandfather, if he went hunting with you, if he went and trapped a beaver, he'd put the bones back into the river. If he trapped a fox and he took the meat, he'd take the bones of the fox and he'd lay it on an old fallen tree, because that's what you do. That's what the Mi'kmaq people do. There was all those little things about him, about his hunt that he did that were Mi'kmaq. There were bones in the beaver's foot and he wouldn't eat that because that was taboo. You bad luck if you eat that. And there's a gland in the moose or the bear, I can't remember. You can't eat that either because that's taboo. And he said that he used to tell me that if you ate it, that you'd have a bad hunt.
I like the wilderness and I like the animals, and I just go in and enjoy it that way. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to do it, but I still love the life.
I walk in the woods, and that's my church. I talk to people, and that's my church. So I'm not bound by having to go to this one little building to, pray and to speak to my Creator. I do it out here. I do it, particularly in the woods, I do it. So I have no incredible hang-ups about not going to church.
It's July, and the Mi'kmaq of Conne River are holding their annual powwow. This 3-day event was established 16 years ago. They're held by First Nation people throughout North America and allow Indigenous people to come together to celebrate their own cultures.
I'm a Mi'kmaq person. I'm from Elsipogtog in New Brunswick. I'm a doctoral student in Canadian Studies. What I'm doing here is basically dancing. I'm a men's traditional dancer. The dancing is rooted in my spirituality. It's a strong spirituality. It's not something that I think about very much. It's just something that I do. I do it throughout the summer during the powwows, but I also do it throughout the fall and the winter as well. The historical context to powwows is that we had annual gatherings in the summertime. We would call those mawiomi. And a mawiomi was basically people would gather around when they cooked meat, and the meat would have drippings coming down, and people kind of waited in anticipation of having a feast. So that's where you get that term mawiomi. It meant a gathering. So during the summer gathering, people would come in and you'd have a lot of ceremonies. Babies would receive their names, people would get married, and they would memorialize the people that passed away during the winter. And a lot of talk would be political, a lot of social activities and ceremonies would take place, and they would have a lot of feasts, and then they would sing and dance at the same time.
70 years ago, when we started talking about a powwow, was whether or not we would get our own people to come to a powwow. But after the first year, it was the kids that came out and brought their parents with them. The first year. The second year, parents started showing up in regalias along with their children. So at that stage, we said, well, we're on to something, let's keep doing it.
Last year was noted as one of the top 29 Aboriginal experiences to see in Canada. So it was kind of set apart from all the other powwows in most of Canada. It's definitely brought a lot of attention to our community too. A lot of people think, I didn't think there were any Aboriginal people in Newfoundland. There were no Indians here. And so this powwow is kind of our resurgence to show, yeah, we are here and we've always been here.
Dancers, make sure you stop right on time.
I think it's a Mi'kmaq manifestation of a Western powwow. It has elements of a powwow from Western Plains cultures that have been adopted and absorbed into Mi'kmaq culture.
Although the community traces its roots back to at least the 1700s, many of its members were assimilated, often through marriage, into the Catholic Church, which became the predominant religion of Mi'kmaq people.
The powwow is slowly but surely replaced the importance of St. Anne's Day. When St. Anne's Day used to be a social gathering, and St. Anne's Day is just a few weeks away.
Is that why you decided to have it just before St. Anne's Day?
I wouldn't admit that to the bishop, no. But yes.
Chief Meisel Joe has sought federal funding to allow the community to establish a First Nation identity, separate from their Catholicism. Though Mi'kmaq spirituality has always been part of their lives.
My father is Roman Catholic, but he respects the environment, I think, like a Mi'kmaq person does. We were walking in nature park, and I noticed the way he'd walk would sometimes be erratic, and he'd walk normal, then almost like he was walking over things. And I asked him, why he was walking like that, and he took me back, to one of the spots where I noticed like a change in his pace. And he looked and he pointed down and he asked if I noticed anything down there, and I told him no, it didn't look any different than anywhere else on the trail. And he said down there, there's a shrew down there. It's a little shrew trail, because the shrew's like a little mouse, I guess, like with a big nose, and they're kind of blind, so they kind of run around. And he said, there's a shrew trail there. It's under the snow. It's like a tunnel. And he said, if I were to walk on that tunnel, he said, then I'd probably ruin that shrew's trail, and he wouldn't know where he was going when he'd come back from getting his food. And, you know, it's something that no one else would think about. I didn't think about it, but something he knew to avoid doing, and that comes from that First Nations side of him. I think that being a Mi'kmaq person has shaped his view of the environment. He's Roman Catholic, and I think that he does have some inherent spirituality about him that sets him apart from a Roman Catholic from St. Albans, someone who's non-Mi'kmaq. Even though he missed it, even though he wasn't exposed to it, you know, in person, there's still something deeper that shapes him.
The resurfacing of traditional Mi'kmaq values can sometimes present difficulties.
I feel denied. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I do feel that I missed out on something. You know, the whole not so much the song and dance, but the language. My grandfather, I did hear him speak a bit, but I learned later in life why he didn't speak it, is because there's influence of his wife, you know, who was not of First Nations either, and usually it's the mothers that raise and rule the roost, I guess, in a way, right? You know.
In that one? Yeah.
Unfortunately, you know, I didn't see the need to carry it on, you know, and I didn't see the importance of holding on to it at the time, and because I didn't see it, right? You know, yeah, I didn't, you know, like I say, it wasn't that at home.
It's an impact on their identity. They feel that they're at a loss when they lose the language. You lose a lot of concepts that don't translate very well into English. The English language uses harvesting. But in the Mi'kmaq language, it's like Nadugdalink, which is it's just a concept that you only take things that you would need and use, and you wouldn't take any more than that. Like I wouldn't go and gather blueberries, and because there's a lot of blueberries there, I decide to take them all. I would just go and gather the ones that I would need and the ones that I would use. And I would leave some there for other people, or leave them there for the animals, or like the bears or whatever.
We jig salmon, yes, but we never took no lot of salmon. We jig 3 or 4 for supper, right? And next day you want some, you go back in. There's a man coming from outside one time and put a net across one and I got 17 barrels of salmon. We never took that in 20 years.
I grew up listening to my mother telling me stories about our culture, about the family, some history. They would tell us stories about little people. They would tell us stories about supernatural people, stories about Glooskap, how he shaped the land. They would talk about their ancestors and how they would fight against the Mohawk. They were enemies of the Mi'kmaq at one point in time. They would say that their grandfather was a Ginup, or a super strong man, and how he would lift barrels and carry them on ships, and how he would hide that strength from other people. But they also talked about plants, medicinal plants, and stories like that as I was growing up. When I got into high school, I began to read a lot. I used to get permission from my French teacher that I'd be able to go to the library, because I explained that I didn't need the French language because I was already bilingual. And they would allow me to go to the library, and I read up a lot about Sioux culture, or Blackfoot culture, or Ojibwe cultures, because I was just curious. And while I was reading in high school, I also came across some material on Mi'kmaq culture.
The idea of, you know, this wealth accumulation of whether it be money or, you know, animals, meat, it doesn't have any bearing in our culture. I think it's because This idea of competition is just also a foreign idea of wanting to be better at something, and wealth is basically the outcome of being better at something, whether it's hunting or trading. No one would be hungry in the community, because if you had meat, you'd share it with the community. And it's only been lately that this idea of wealth has come into play in our community.
Well, I think it's telling wider society that capitalism isn't the main objective. It doesn't have to be the main objective in life. Accumulation of wealth doesn't have to be the main focus in life. That there can be appreciation for other life. There can be appreciation for the moment that we live now, and not to worry so much about the future. It's a more comprehensive outlook. You're not just thinking about yourself anymore. You think about your family, you think about your community, you're thinking about the region in general. You're not even focused on your own species. You're looking at animal life, you're looking at plant life, you're looking at the condition of water. You're even concerned about the planet itself, the sustainability of the planet. I find you don't receive that in a Western knowledge or a Western focus. But a lot of Indigenous people, not just in Canada, but around the world, they have that type of focus. They have a broader focus on life.